box and the green one, little box and the blue one, box and the yellow one and the little and the box and the green one.
According to Matthew King, spirituality, as opposed to religion, is rooted in the notion that there is an immaterial reality, energy, for example, that we experience due to our existence or being. Spirituality is not a belief in physical beings like gods or goddesses, but a state of being in connection with something larger than oneself, both immanently and transcendentally. Today, we cover spirituality in this week's episode of You Can Call Me Karen.
Box, little box.
Welcome, ladies.
Hi. Greetings, Earthlings.
Hey, Steph.
I can't. Oh, greetings, Earthlings.
For
I
those
can only do it
who
with one
cannot
hand.
see us, we are doing the Mork and Mindy. No, that's Steph. You're muted, honey.
Whoopsie.
What is it? Star Trek?
It's Star
Yes,
Trek.
Star Trek.
And it's funny because I
Don't you do
never
it this
remember to
way?
mute. You do it this way. I never remember to mute. And then I did this time for the music. And then I actually
Stay muted.
I
Can you
never
guys
did.
do that with two hands or
Sure can.
just one?
That was my left hand, yo.
I can. Yeah, I got them both.
I can't do it with my right hand. So what does that say
And
about
you're
me?
right-handed.
I know. Look at this is my right hand.
Okay, everybody, get out to YouTube. You got a witness.
Because this girl.
This is where my planet. This is how we greet one another.
That's funny.
All right. Before we get to something that's a little bit more structured than what just happened there, we are going to talk this week about spirituality. And so I needed a little disclaimer up front because I know that for many, this can be a very divisive topic. So just want to ask that our listeners stick with us, come with an open mind. We are going to do the same as we talk about our spiritual and religious journeys and, how we've thought about this over the course of our lifetime. And so we really want to just have an inclusive discussion on the topic, and we will be respectful to all religions and beliefs, et cetera. So just wanted to kind of set that up front before, we dive in. And then before we dive in, let's talk a little bit about some Karens for the week. So ladies, this week, who you calling Karen?
We're doing a lot of diving in.
We're diving
in. Right now we're belly flopping, and then we'll dive later.
Ouchie.
Wait, can I go first?
Oh, sure.
I'd like to go first because my Karen story is not I don't know that you guys would agree that this is a Karen.
Oh,
Great.
okay.
Yeah.
Controversial. I like it.
So my Karen's for the week is my very almost, as in like a month from now, 3-year-old child Quinn. She's my Karen.
I like this already.
I love her.
Not that sweet angel.
This sweet angel, we started potty training her yesterday.
Oh.
And this child has okay.
Strong-willed.
I feel like in these last couple of weeks has been intentionally gaslighting us. It's like an intentional. I feel like she looks me in my eyes and says, "Can I have this?" And I'll be like, "Yes, of course." And I hand it to her and she says, "I don't want this." Or, "Can you sit on the potty?" "No, I don't want to sit on the potty." "I need to sit on the potty." In the same breath. And I just feel like I don't know if this is necessarily Karen because you know, she's not getting in my business, but her livelihood is my business, and she's making it very difficult.
Her livelihood is
My business, and she's making it so hard. And
Not the gaslighting though.
she is gaslighting. It's
I know
she's
exactly
gaslighting.
that behavior.
And like it's so funny because like it's like a switch flips, and she'll be like, I'm listening. Like, because she knows that she's not. And I'm like, but you're not really listening. I love you, but you're not listening. And so,
If
But
it's any
any tips?
consolation,
Okay.
I have a nearly 7-year-old, and we
Oh
are
my
still
God.
doing that. We are still being gaslit every day
So
by that child.
Maxwell is almost 7.
Actually,
That's
that doesn't
wild.
make me feel better because
It was sarcastic.
okay, yeah, because I'm like I don't know how much like I can't live like this.
Yeah.
It's like I'm like living in an alternate universe where up
Yeah.
means down and down means
Yep.
you know.
I think we just have Stockholm syndrome at this point.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, I feel I again. I just have to keep reminding myself that I do love her, but I'm not.
But you
But I
don't like
want-
her right now?
I don't like her right now.
Oh my gosh. This is
She's
reminding me
tripping.
of like I told you guys several years ago
Mhm.
when Brielle turned 6 or
Mhm.
7. I was like, I'm just starting to like her again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Remember?
Yeah.
And you guys
You
were
did say
like,
that.
huh?
Mhm.
I was
We
like,
didn't have kids yet.
yeah, you didn't have kids
Yeah.
yet. And I was like, I'm
No.
telling you, there's
Mhm.
something that happened between when she turned 3 and
Uh-huh.
now. And it was not pretty.
It's
Yeah.
not pretty.
And
For
maybe
us,
it's
it
just their
was
parents.
like 4. It was just after 4. It was like when he
Mhm.
started pre-K. He
Mhm.
went from angel to demon.
Mhm.
Oh, this is a great analogy considering today's
Angel
topic.
Demon.
And yeah, and he just came out of it like I think I don't know. It's been a minute, but he's fantastic now. He does still gaslight the shit out of us, but I think that's just having a child, honestly.
I think so too.
Yeah. Lately, I'll be like, hey, you don't want to smack that thing, it'll break. So no, thank you. I always say no, thank you. Now she responds with, I'm not no, thank you. And so now I have to explain, I'm not calling you no, thank you. I'm saying no, and I'm thanking you for stopping the behavior. I'm not no, thank you.
Oh my gosh. I think the hardest part about all this is like, you want her to kind of keep that part of her, right? So
Mhm.
like how do you correct? This goes back to our parenting episode, like how do you
Yeah.
correct without taking away like that
That
like-
fire.
Yeah, because when she's
Mhm.
not, when she is in like, I don't want to say like potential danger, but when she is in a situation where she does have to stand up for herself, you
Mhm.
want her to be able to stand up for herself. So it's like, how
Yeah.
do you teach and
Yeah.
correct without
Mhm.
taking away that like power
Mhm.
from
I'm like, I
from
hear
them?
you.
Yeah,
still,
I hear you.
No.
Yeah.
Also, in the spirit of today's episode, when's Quinn's birthday? Or
April
maybe it's
28th.
tomorrow, next week's episode. When is it?
It's April 28th.
April 28th. Are her
So-
and Maxwell the same sign?
Yeah, he would be yeah.
Taurus.
He's May 5th.
Yeah.
Honestly, I have never even thought about his sign until you said that.
Ooh.
That's a little teaser.
Ooh, that just got me excited. Yeah, she's a Taurus.
Yeah,
Whoa.
these tourists. Maybe that's the similarity there.
Interesting.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, because I can't think of a time I've been gaslit by my kids recently, but I know it's happened in their toddlerhood for sure.
Mhm.
Okay, so my Karen is it's actually another Chad.
Ooh.
And this goes back to a few months ago, maybe like the beginning of the school year when I was looking for properties of where I was going to be establishing my business. I was waiting for my real estate agent to show me a place. in this affluent community that's the community next door to where we live. And this man was going into a bagel shop when I was like standing there waiting to get into the space. And I was still standing there when he came out because my real estate agent is also Black. So we were on CP time, I'm guessing.
You were holding a straight face, and I was like, please say it.
And so while I'm standing there waiting, the guy who looked, I could tell the look when he first saw me waiting, when he was going in. So I was waiting for this or expecting this behavior from him. When he came out, he said, are you waiting for the bus? Yeah. I said, no, I'm waiting to get in here to buy this property.
Good for you. Good for you.
But like,
is there a bus there? Is there a bus?
Exactly.
I know.
Exactly. There's
Like,
one, right.
Sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Do you see a bus stop? That's what have popped out of my mouth. Do you see a bus stop here?
Yeah. Yeah. So that shows you the only people who he recognizes in his community who are of people who have melanin inside of them wait for the bus and are the help. And he could not understand the fact that somebody would be existing in his space who was not help.
I take it to an even darker place because, like,
oh no,
why? I know, but like, why would you even say anything unless you felt like this person didn't belong in your space? And so he was like, I feel like he was like, you need to get on your bus and be gone because you can't be here, which maybe is the same place you took it. But like,
yeah,
what were you doing that was so threatening to him just existing? You were just being there, which
exactly.
I'm sorry.
Right. And I do want to remind our listeners, this was September of 2024. So when we are talking about progress and if progress has been made, right? These are the interactions that we are talking about of why in our reality progress has not been made.
Right.
No.
And I have never in my life been asked if I was waiting for a bus or if I belonged in a certain place or not. So, I mean, yeah, I think we can all think of our own circumstances and whether that jives or not. Jeez, Chad.
Yeah.
Chad, I hope you're listening. He's not.
I'm gonna go on a limb here and say I'm gonna take a deep dive and say Chad is not listening to You Can Call Me Karen.
He may have found this podcast based on the name, listened to one episode, and realized he was tricked.
Same for me.
On that note, those are your Karens for the week. All right. So this week and next, we are going to be talking about spirituality. And as my lovely co-hosts know, this is the topic I know the most about. Oh, no, not
Or
at all,
sarcasm?
Yes, sarcasm is kind of my thing. So, in all seriousness, spirituality can mean different things to different people. So we thought it would be nice to have just like an open conversation on how we all think of our own spirituality and how it can be like a pretty divisive topic. And so we want to bring people in and, just kind of share different experiences. This, as I mentioned, is part of a 2-part series on spirituality. So for this week, we're going to start off by just us having a conversation on our own spiritual journey in our lifetimes. And then next week, we're going to dive in with a guest into a little bit more of like where we are today.
Can I ask a question real quick?
You may.
For you guys, do you think that spirituality is divisive or religion?
Yeah, well, religion for sure.
Religion.
Oh, sorry. And end of discussion. Thank you for your
That's it. That's all I was wondering.
Short episode.
See you next week, Karens.
Just solved all the problems. Yes, definitely. I would say organized religion. And it's I think it's because of the rules that organized religion creates and like the bounds that it sets and the right and the wrong, if you will. And so I think it comes from a good place, what ultimately becomes divisiveness, because people are like, if you do it this way, you will get to whatever, the end goal is, depending on your religion. And so like people think they're trying to help, I think. I don't know. That's what I'm sticking with.
I like it. Steph, what do you think?
Definitely organized religion. You know what like? I feel like religion and I think about like politics in the United States, right? And we have the Republicans and we have the Democrats, and both seem to want United States to be successful. They just believe vehemently that their way to the successes of the country is the only way and the best way and the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that with religion. Like, at the end of the day, it's talking about like forever peace or with God or connection to God. And this is the only correct path to God. And every religion has their belief that theirs is the only way.
I think that's a really great comparison. Like, it's like you're convicted in something you believe so strongly about, and you think it's for the better of everybody. And so it's really hard to have both sides coexist without conflict. And like, gosh, we can see that through the course of human history, the conflict that organized religion can cause.
Like bloodshed.
Yeah. I mean, we have a whole set of holy wars that were. Good news is I didn't do any research on the history of religion for this episode, so I will spare everyone that. Usually that's my go-to of like, whatever the topic is, history of. So we're going to try to keep it a little lighter today, even though we started off pretty deep there. But what I would like to do actually is we like have each of us this week discuss just how like our journey with either religion or spirituality over the course of our lifetime, because I think that will set us up for a good discussion next week as well. And happy to, like have you all interject as I go through mine, and vice versa, but I can get us kicked off. So as I mentioned, not exactly the most knowledgeable about religion and spirituality. I grew up going to a Unitarian Universalist church, which might be a little bit foreign to some of our listeners. It was founded, or it's like part of Christianity somewhere along the lines. But I like to call it, I hope this isn't offensive to people, but in the church that I went to growing up were like a bunch of grown-up hippies, kind of like it's, very in tune with your spirituality, kind of open for everyone, right? Like the whole premise is you can believe what you want to believe. It's a place of worship and you can do it in a way that feels right to you. When I was the specific church that I grew up in was in the suburbs of Illinois, or the suburbs of Chicago here. And what their structure was adults would go to the mass or the service, whatever it was called, not mass. And then the kids would go to religious education based on like your age group. And in each week, we would learn about like different religions or different types of spirituality and what other people worshiped and believed and stuff like that. And so I always joked over the years that like because I was taught about all these different ways to practice spirituality, that it kind of made me an atheist, because I was like, well, who am I to pick which one is right? You know, like they all seem nice and good. But I really struggled with the thought that like one would be right and one would be wrong. And I do want to pause a moment on the word atheist, because I do feel like a lot of people recoil at that word. Like it has such a negative connotation. But the reality is it's like, I don't necessarily believe in a, a God, but that also means I don't believe in like the opposite of God, like a devil, right? Like there is neither of those presences um in my kind of world, if you will. And so I don't know. It feels like people hear atheist and assume you're like a devil worshiper, which is those things just
Well,
those
I think
more.
sorry to interrupt, but I think I just, in my experience and in my circles of like people with faith, I think the recoil underneath all that is about control. So like if you don't believe in control and an insecurity in their higher power. So if you don't believe that there's a God, then what does that say about the God that I believe in? And so I think it threatens their faith and their relationship with a higher power, that you could believe that
It
that their
doesn't
God
exist.
doesn't exist.
Yeah. There's this interview with Ricky Gervais.
Oh, I love that. I love that you said that.
I think it
Yes.
was Stephen Colbert. But first of all, I know he can be a very divisive person. Like his extreme and very direct beliefs can be off-putting to people. But Ricky Gervais said something like, I'm going to get the numbers wrong. There's like 1,000 gods across, you know, all of the various world's religions. And so if you're he was speaking to Stephen Colbert, if you're a Catholic, you believe in one of 1,000. And he's like, as an atheist, I just believe in one less. Like, you know, you believe in
Yeah.
one of 1,000. I believe in 0 of 1,000.
Right.
And I thought that was just so helpful to envision, because it's like, well, you don't believe in 999. So like, you know, we're not actually that far apart.
Yeah. I love that.
I love that.
Yeah. That
But
reminds me of something I was listening to the other day that talked about, and it's similar to like the point that you guys were making before. Maybe it's not, I don't know, but I'll just say it. They were talking about how we create gods based off of like our environment and our circumstances. And I guess I was thinking about this with what you were saying about your upbringing, and like they were like hippies, looking for a place to go, right? Looking for a place of worship, looking for a place of belief. So they designed this Unitarian church based off of the need that they had in order to fill a wound in their heart. Same with when we go to other countries, like, if we go to not ancient countries, but if we go to countries that, are in, that deal with a lot of drought, they believe in gods that have like, will
bring
bring
rain.
water, will bring rain, like in the Black community, we needed a God that was going to help us build resiliency, so it all kind of depends on there's a lot that goes into why gods are created based off of climate, circumstances, situations of the people who are suffering. And I think that goes to, the point that we started with of like, is religion divisive? Is spirituality divisive, or is religion divisive? Because religion are created by people who need to have answer for their suffering.
Yes. Okay, we're done. I just that really speaks to me, and it reminded me of a class I took in college. So I I have always kind of identified as an atheist. I took this religious studies class in college so that I could
Mm,
have better vocabulary around religion when I felt like, a lot of Americans are Christian, a lot of our friends are Christian or Catholic, which I think are the same thing. We're like, on the same umbrella or whatever.
yeah.
And I never really had a good vocabulary when things, of a religious nature would come up. So I took this religious studies class, which was kind of just a big, like, history of religion, and
Mm-hmm.
what you were just describing is exactly the types of things that they covered in that class of just, when we see the first, call it organized religion start to arise in humanity. It comes like really early, like, drawings,
Yeah.
the oldest drawings that they can find.
Yeah.
And it's all based on exactly that. It started as, an explanation for the unexplainable.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, uh it seems, in my opinion, and this is where I think some of this can get a little divisive, so hopefully this isn't offensive, but it has become a way to control people, and it's become a power that can be abused if it's in the wrong hands and things like that. And so um, that's where I begin to, I guess, struggle a bit with the organized religion concept. I will say, though, that as I've gotten older, um, and have spent more time trying to, like, understand myself a little bit more, I feel like I don't totally dismiss the idea of, I'll say, some kind of a energy, right? Like there is, in my mind, I like logic, I like science, like that's how I comprehend things. And
Mm-hmm.
there is like a merging of science and spirituality at some point, I feel like, where it's probably close to Buddhism, where it's like we're all sort of connected. Um, oh my gosh, what am I thinking of? We were just watching White Lotus, the third
Mm-hmm.
season. I don't know if you guys are
Yes.
into it.
Yeah, we're
Um,
watching that. We're all cut up.
Okay, so there's like the I think it's a Buddhist
Mm-hmm.
group,
Yeah.
and the monk explained um, life as like, if you think of water, I'm going to get this kind of wrong, but the way he did it was so brilliant. And it's like when you're born, it's like a
Mm,
droplet kind of separating from the body of water, and that
right.
droplet has like a journey, and you're independent and you have your own consciousness, and then the returning uh, death is like the returning of that droplet to the body of water. And so it's
Mm.
like a happy return or something, he
Mm.
said. And I was like, oh, yes, that's like exactly, the water is the energy. Anyways, so
Yeah.
that I felt like it was a nice way to, I don't know how I just made the parallel to White Lotus, everything
Yeah.
else about that show.
You were talking about Buddhism and yeah.
But in any case, I think that's where I'm at in my life now. I'm looking forward to our conversation next week because I think it's an opportunity to just explore spirituality a little bit more. But
Mm-hmm.
I will stop there and pass it over to whoever wants to go first to share a bit about your journey over your lifetime as well. And then we can pick that apart too.
Uh-oh. Is this therapy
No,
or you can
no.
call me
Yeah.
Karen?
Yes.
I can go.
Okay.
So my parents.
Sorry, wait, just to clarify, we're just talking about like
Yeah.
growing up and first, and then we'll talk about where we are now.
I would cover the whole gamut. Give it to us all. Give it all to us. You know what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay.
I grew up going to church. So it's kind of interesting. Like my parents my parents were married for like 20 years and then were divorced when I was about a sophomore, maybe in high school. And we grew up going to church. Interestingly, both my parents, I've shared before, are from Jamaica. So Black family, mom, dad, me and my younger brother. And but we went to a predominantly white church.
Uh-oh.
Which
I'm just
I
kidding.
know, I know. I feel like I
sort
do
of.
feel like that
Sort
is
of.
kind of important to
Mm-hmm.
know. I feel like
Yeah.
that is a little important to know.
Mhm.
So
The white
without like
devil.
getting
I'm just kidding.
without getting
Sorry, I'm gonna stop.
girl without getting too personal, my mom's mom, so my grandma, who we just celebrated her 90th birthday a couple weeks ago.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Grandma.
Happy birthday,
birthday.
grandma. She's the best. So my grandma is divorced. Okay. And my grandpa, who has passed, he passed, oh my gosh, my grandpa died of COVID in 2020, like in the height of it.
Wow.
Yeah. He, like, again, without getting too personal, this is truth that he was very abusive to my grandma. So, like, for someone of that time to get divorced, that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Mhm.
So that's important to know because we would go to church, but for a while, my mom would stay home. My dad would take my brother and I to church.
Yeah.
My mom was starting to be like, she always struggled with church because my
Mhm.
grandpa, who made them
Mhm.
go to church, was pretty abusive to my grandmother. And
Mm.
so she really struggled with the hypocrisy
Yeah.
of, preaching God's love and then coming home and not being,
I think that's
so
why my mom ended up in the Unitarian church, actually.
yeah. So just know that
Wow.
that message was always kind of in the back
Purpose.
of my head when going to church. And I
Mm.
also didn't really have a great connection to the church that we attended. Like, we attended this church and it was a Baptist church. So I grew up Baptist, and it was, just a lot of old white people, no offense. And then like
No offense.
they had like, interesting, they had the classes for the kids and then the big service for the adults. And I don't know, I just didn't really feel connected when I went to those classes and all that. So when my parents got divorced, there was kind of a lull in going to church because my mom
Mm.
was not the one who took us to church, and we
Oh,
were
yeah.
with her predominantly. But then I made some friends that were Christian and went to a church that had a lot of programming for teens, and I started to go to church with them.
Yeah.
And then
Oh, I didn't realize that part of it, Steph.
yeah,
So it wasn't with your immediate family that you were going to that
no,
church.
Mm.
I was invited to stuff, and then really liked it, and I'd be like, Mom, I think you would like this church. Like, we should go to this
Oh.
church. Yeah, and so we would go to church every Sunday, but it was really kind of me encouraging us all to go. And I liked the church. It was casual. Like the other church we went to, you had to get super dressed up, and it was like really
Mm.
Those are the Baptist.
yeah.
So it
Baptist.
wasn't the later one wasn't Baptist.
So it had a Baptist undertone. It was called New Life Community Christian Church, and it was supposed to be welcoming, but you did get baptized there, like the way that Baptists believe to be baptized. So not like Catholics where you baptize into the church. It's a declaration of your faith.
Yeah.
So they do have like baptism. So you could tell it was like a Baptist undertone, but everyone was welcome, kind of a thing.
Okay.
And so I feel like I felt like my spirituality and my connection and my faith really grew because I was going to these I was going to Bible studies, and we were having discussions. We would read passages and discuss what it meant to us. And I just felt really more connected to my faith then than when I was a kid.
Mhm.
But then I went to college, and my whole freshman year, I would drive home every Sunday and go to church.
Yeah.
And then you met us
And then I met
heathens.
you guys, and I was like,
Sunday, I'm not going to church. I'm drinking.
but I feel like
I'm nursing my hangover.
I feel like at the time, yes, 100%. Like I was like, I'm not driving home. I think I just got home like 4 hours ago.
And we would have practice.
Practice
Like,
on Sundays too, that
so
didn't help
you
anything.
had to rest. Yes.
Yes. But I feel like in college, something that awoken in me was my political beliefs and my view on the United States and how, and I felt like around that time, like, you know, my first presidential election I voted in was for in 2004 for John Kerry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I feel like that was around when there was a lot of weaponizing the Christian faith. And I felt like kind of how my mom must have felt. Like, you're talking about faith, but you're being so hateful towards the LGBTQ community. You're being so hateful towards people who struggle financially. You're being so hateful toward, you know, and so my faith kind of had another shift because I believe in helping those who need help, and I believe in inclusivity, and I believe in finding what, you know, like just very progressive views. And I felt like the Republican Party and the Conservative Party really found a way to align Christianity with their beliefs, and it just, so I just had a hard time like with church. And I'll tell another quick story and then I will stop talking. But
We were wondering. No, I'm just kidding.
So this is post college. I was maybe, I don't really know. I was in my mid 20s maybe. And it was Father's Day, and my dad has been remarried. He and his wife have 2 kids, so I have 2 half siblings. And it was Father's Day, but it was a certain Father's Day. It was the Father's Day after the Pulse shooting. So I don't know what year that was.
I don't know what the Pulse shooting is.
Orlando.
Oh, in Las
in
Vegas?
Orlando. No, it was in
Orlando.
Florida.
Okay.
It was a
And
gay club.
Gay
Right.
club, and 49 people were killed.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe. And
This would have been like 6 or 7 years ago.
Oh, I thought it was longer ago. I think it's longer ago.
Yeah,
than
maybe
that.
longer.
Yeah.
Maybe longer.
So anyway, it was like, you know, that happened on like a Friday, and then that Sunday was Father's Day. P.S. That weekend is always the same weekend as Pride here in Columbus.
Yes.
And
Father's Day, yeah.
Father's Day weekend is always like the weekend of Pride. And so so just keep that in mind. And so I'm like, it's Father's Day. I think my dad would love it if I went to church. I feel like maybe I should go to church anyway. I was feeling really, I don't know, after the Pulse shooting. And I was like, I could use a good message. My dad and his wife go to a predominantly Black church. And so I usually look forward to going there if I, you know, music and everything like that. But this pastor basically gave this whole sermon about manhood and how you're not a man if you are gay. And basically gave this sermon about how like the universe is speaking out against like homosexuality, because the universe is showing us that this isn't like, I mean, it was the most disgusting sermon I have ever heard, that you could ever say on the weekend that 49 souls lost their lives. And, you know, and people were in the like,
Oh no.
And
Yeah.
let me tell you, the way that I wanted to run, like, and lose my mind. And so from that day forward, I promised I would never set foot in that church again. And I have not. And that it made me sick to my stomach. And I still, I still get upset about it. So that's why, like, I have a tricky relationship with my faith, because I do believe what I believed. You know, I do believe in Jesus. I do believe, you know, like I grew up believing that, and I had a really powerful connection with my faith, especially since I gained it in my youth, and I gained it through through friendships, and we were reading the Bible and discussing it. And I feel like there's so much positivity, but what has happened in this country with faith has made me not want to go, because it, and that's, I just probably have not found the right church that would, present it in the way that I would feel comfortable. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot there, Steph. That was,
Sorry.
I know. I feel like I have a gajillion questions, but
I'm looking at the time and I'm like,
yeah.
Sorry.
It's
so
okay.
we'll have Manny. No. This is great. I think this sets up next week really nicely. So
yeah. No,
Manny,
the foundation of our faith is important. And I think my only response, I have lots of responses, but the one that's coming to mind for me right now is that post-election, or right before the election, I think I mentioned this on another episode, but right before the election ended, I did have, I was in like a very meditative, contemplative place. And I think the Pope had just come out with something about, he made some sort of statement that I really disagreed with. And it just occurred to me, like, we're going to, like, the spiritual leadership of the world, not even of our country, but the spiritual leadership of the world has lost its way. And people are aching for spiritual leadership, and we currently don't have anyone. We don't have a Mother Teresa. We don't have a Martin Luther King. We don't have we don't have a spiritual leader who is going to help the collective evolve and heal and repair. And that, it can make you sad, or it can make you go inward to discover what you need for yourself and determine your own, spiritual practice that feels right and soothing. And that's the beauty of not having a monopoly on God, but I think what I'm hearing is that, like, people are trying to place a monopoly on God, and it is so impossible to do that, which is why we're seeing so much conflict. We're seeing masses leaving the church. I think this is, again, going to lead into our conversation of next week of like witchcraft and woo, and people returning back to, those ancient healing practices that we did that were more for smaller tribes of people. Yeah. And I think, the other thing here with regard to spirituality, and just like trying to get really concrete on this definition of, like, it's not material. It's not biological. It's not ideology. It's not ideology. It's not biology, and it's not psychology. Right. And so I think one of the reasons why we confuse our spirituality and why religion gets so blurred is because we confuse spirituality with biology, or we confuse spirituality with ideology, or we confuse spirituality with psychology. And it's none of that. It's not of the material world. And I think what I'm understanding about myself now that I'm older and I have a very fluid spiritual practice, I guess. I guess for me, like, spirituality explains for me, or having a higher power, or God explains for me what happens when things vanish and what happens when things appear, seemingly out of nowhere. And my story starts there. I have shared that I lost my dad when I was 8. And so that's the genesis for me, right? How do you explain to an 8-year-old that people just vanish? How do you explain to an 8-year-old that people disappear? And thankfully, my mom allowed for me to be on that journey on my own. Everybody in my house lost somebody that day that my dad died, and we all experienced it differently. And I would go to try to find answers to that in the woods. I was like just always out in nature, playing by the creek. Like I liked being by myself, and just trying to understand how someone can just leave and we not know where they go. And so much of spirituality for me and my learning is about embracing death and not being scared to die and not being scared to lose people. And that is such a hard journey. But it's death is one of the like major contemplative points of my meditation, because I think for so long I was scared of death from losing somebody so young. And I would explore it in a very natural, curious way when I was young. But then I got to college and discovered drugs and alcohol, and that curiosity turned into numbing. And when I think about like the collective, and I think about like our exploration of death and life together as a collective, I see a lot of numbing happening in our society, you know, whether it be through drugs, alcohol, food, sex, social media, whatever it might be. We're trying to numb something that's such a natural occurrence. Or we're trying to explain it and assure people of something that we can't assure them of, you know, or it might look different for them, you know. So a lot of my growing up, we were Baptist, and church was an all-day occasion. We would leave from
Really? I had no idea.
yeah. We would leave from our house. There was a 10:45 service or a 7:30 service. 7:30 service lasted like an hour. 10:45 service lasted till about 3:00. And sometimes there would be, and
Why?
sometimes there would be.
Yeah.
I mean, like, why the difference between the two? Like, what is?
I'm gonna explain, girl.
Okay, sorry. This is all new to me.
Sometimes there would be a afternoon service too. So that would mean that depending on my mom, like depending on your service to the church, my mom was an usher. So depending on your service to the church, like that would kind of dictate where we would go, what service we would go to. But my mom was an usher, but then my brothers and sister and I, we sung in the choir, and we were also ushers. So like if my mom was ushering at 7:30 and we were ushering at 10:45, like that would require us to stay like all day. And then if there was an after the normal service, if we had like a guest come in to preach and my mom wanted to hear that person preach, then we would stay till like 3. And we lived an hour away from my church. So if we were going to 7:30 service, we were leaving the house at 6:00. So it was a long day. Yes. And
wait, but can you tell me what, like, why was the 7:30 service 1 hour and then the later one was like 5? Or my math isn't mathing.
Yeah, so the preacher would only preach for like a shorter amount of time, and the structure of the service would be like they wouldn't go through all the announcements, they wouldn't go through like all the songs. Like there's a lot of prayer and worship that goes into the 10:45 service that gets consolidated in the 7:30 service. So the 10:40.
Is it more just like for the preference of the what's the word, congregation? Like you can kind of, if you want something that's a little more focused, you know, you come to the 7:30. If you want like the whole, is that the purpose of having the two?
Yeah, I think there's
different?
an exchange there between the preference of the people, like offering up a variety to people to be able to at least access the worship. And I think it's also the preacher being able to get a little warmed up for the 7:30. And I think because there's so many our churches now, we're seeing membership dwindle, but I think also there's so many choirs. So to give the choirs an opportunity and everyone an opportunity to serve in a way, right? So, and then if it's Communion Sunday, we didn't even get into that. If it's Communion Sunday, then you get an opportunity to get communion if you can't make it at the later service. So, that's
How often, I'm sorry, I have lots of questions. How often was Communion Sunday?
Communion is once a month.
Once a month.
Okay.
Yeah. So communion always at my church fell on the third Sunday of the month or something like that. So each month had a different spiritual focus. But yeah. Any other questions before I keep going?
Please proceed. But yes, I do have more questions.
I don't even know where I was in my story, so I'll just pause there for now. And
Well, I guess
we can regroup, I guess.
it's
Wait, sorry.
interesting.
I do remember where I was going with this though. Part of the reason why I brought this up is because after church, my dad was very sick. So after church, my dad was at a nursing home, and we would go and we would visit my dad at the nursing home. That was a part of the ritual of Sunday. So I would get to the only time during the week I got to see my dad was on Sunday after church. And so when he left, that ritual also left. So that part of the grief also was a wound that I was trying to find, right? And that's also something that doesn't get explained to you when you're going through your healing process of these little tiny memories that you hold with another person. Where do you place them now that you no longer are physically seeing that person in the capacity in which you were doing it or doing so? And so I had a lot of my curiosity around death was, what do I do? What do we do now with this time? What becomes of this moment in time now that we no longer are visiting the nursing home after church? And that was, something that was uncomfortable. It's a deep silence that is very loud. And then, the rhythm of my house changed, right? My brother, seemingly became the man of the house, right? My sister, who's 12 years older than me, had to start she already had various responsibilities, but she was taking me to my dance classes and my soccer practices. I went with her on dates. The rhythm of our house changed, in the morning, they all left to go to school. High school, middle school starts before elementary school. My mom had to get to work in Virginia, so I was alone during those times. And then, the house creaks in a different way, and, shifts start to occur, and that you're like, "Ugh, this is kind of creepy,"
Yeah.
So I had to kind of make, meaning of that. And going back to what I was saying about why people develop their own gods, that was my why. That was why I dove deep into my spirituality, is because I was searching for answers and mainly comfort for my grief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recognize we are 50 some minutes, and so we're going to wrap up, but I do think I think we should revisit something along these lines in the next season, because I think it's interesting, some of what you alluded to, Manny, about there is a exodus from church, from organized religion broadly right now. I think it's interesting that all three of us grew up going to different churches and seemingly are not going to church with our families, I don't believe. And so it's interesting that our children are being raised in a very different way. And so anyways, I think that's just something that we should dive into in a future episode, because I get the sense from a lot of my friend group, for example, that they had very similar journeys, not exactly the same. And so it's like a totally different world that our children are experiencing. And it does make me wonder, like, is Maxwell missing something that would be helpful for him further down the line to process things like what you're describing of like loss or grief? So anyways, I think that's just something we should hold on to and maybe revisit. But in the interest of time, does anyone have any confessionals that you want to share before we wrap?
I had a question for you, Manny, when you were saying, you were talking about like spirituality is being conflated with ideology and conflated with, what were the other ones? Because
Biology and
Psychology.
psychology.
psychology. And so I was curious about that because part of my my discomfort with organized religion was because it challenged what I believe ideologically about what my faith had taught me. And so what I believe that should look like when it comes to how we help people. And I feel like there was like, for example, and I'm sorry, this is kind of another story, and I'm sorry for another story, but like, I remember when I was voting for President Obama, my dad, who married a Republican woman, was voting for McCain.
That was pause was a very
That was
long
a
eye
big
roll.
eye roll. And at the same time, there was a bill for marriage equality. At the same time you were voting for Obama, there was a marriage equality on the ballot. And my dad asked me, what do you plan to vote for that? And I'm like, I'm voting to preserve marriage equality. And he was like so mad. He got really mad, and he said, where does your faith play into this, Stephanie? And I said, it plays 100% into this because I believe that God loves us all. And I also believe in the United States of America, where it says separation of church and state. And I mean, we were arguing. And so, and I felt like it popped right out of my mouth. I'm like, my faith has everything to do with why I believe that everyone should be treated equally and fairly. And I believe that there should be supports in place for those who struggle. And my faith has everything to do with why I believe what I believe about people. And so that's why, so I was curious, like when you're saying spirituality, so would you say spirituality and faith are two different things? And like how, like the disconnect between ideology, because I feel like those are ideologies, but I feel like my faith informs that.
So I think a lot of things. I think religion and spirituality are two separate things.
Yes.
And so if I might have misspoke when I said, I think religion is trying to disguise itself as spirituality when it's really just religion. Period. And so to Karen's point, religion, the purpose of religion should be where people come to commune and celebrate their faith together. And that's like, to answer Karen's question, there's very few spaces where we get to celebrate our faith, and we get to congregate together, we get to worship together, we get to be in praise together, we get to be in the anointing together, to either celebrate our joy or mourn our collective grief. And that was the purpose of religion. Spirituality is personal. And, so there's a spiritual teacher, Father Richard Rohr, and he talks about this duality of like, how am I any different when I say my faith says this? My faith says that that's the same thing that they're saying on the other side. My faith says not to do that. Right. And so we have this conflict of duality, of extremes, of going from one side of the pendulum to the other. And so my spirituality should bring me to middle. My spirituality should
Center yourself.
should center me, should bring me balance, should bring me harmony, should bring me peace. So ideology
Mm.
is mental. It's me on my mental plane. So like if you the deeper you get into your spiritual practice, you understand that there's like different ethereal planes that surround us. And so the ideology and the psychology are two separate planes that are really mental planes, and the biology is your physical plane, and your spirituality is in like your heart center. So for me, the reason why my spiritual practice continues to evolve and expand, and why I come back day to day today, is because I personally default to a mental plane. I like the mental, like,
Same.
like
Same.
state of being. So
Yep.
my goal, my focus in my spiritual practice is, how do I transfer that mental energy, or how do I move that energy into my heart and open up my heart so that I can be in a space energetically with people who disagree with me and provide grace.
Yeah, I ain't got that.
Yeah.
I ain't got that.
I don't. Mm-mm. Oh,
I
that's it
have
right
one
there.
quick confessional just to lighten things up before we leave. You just said a word that I believe I have never said the same twice. Ethereal? Ethereal?
Ethereal.
Yeah. So that's my confessional. I've said it out loud maybe 3 times in my life. It's never come out the same. And I don't plan to change that. So anyways,
Keep doing you, Karen.
this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you both for being open and candid and sharing your experiences. I'm excited for next week's episode, where we will bring a guest, Lex Smith. She's a wellness expert and founder of Spiritual You. She will share more about spirituality, how it can take different forms from what we've been talking about as organized religion, and how that can be part of our lives, either independently or in addition to more like organized religion. Thank you so much for joining us for today's discussion. Please follow us on Instagram at @YouCanCallMeKaren_pod. On YouTube, subscribe where you get your podcasts. Please leave a review so we can keep doing this every week, and we will see you next week. Bye, Karen.
Bye.